Okay, so welcome to today's topic. We're going to be introducing the vocabulary that is associated with polynomials and polynomial operations that we're going to be working on. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump in on the vocabulary. So you should be able to, before you're done, name a polynomial, find the degree, identify the coefficients of each term, and make sure you know how to write a polynomial in standard form. So those are the things that we'll be looking for. So first off, let's just talk about what standard form is. And if you'll look at the notation here, this is the technical way, I guess you should say, of writing standard form. Now, one of the things that you need to remember is that as we're doing this, that the A value, okay, is our coefficient. And then that the N that we're going to be referring to is the degree. And in fact, your N is your highest degree, then N minus 1 would be the next, and so forth. So I'll give you some examples of what this looks like with actual numbers here in just a minute. So let's just talk about what an actual polynomial is by definition on there. So polynomials are sums or differences, either ones, of a group of terms, okay? So let's just write that down. It is the sum or difference excuse me. Of terms. Okay, and so, well, what is the term that we're going to be talking about? So if I have, again, a polynomial in standard form, it might look something like this. This, in fact, would be a quadratic. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so when I talk about term, this has three terms. So this would be a term, another term, and another term. And as you see, they are put together by, in this case, I just used addition. And so that's what we mean by a polynomial. It is the sum or difference of terms. I like to put that word of there twice on there. So now in terms of terms, let's talk about what we have there. And a monomial is what we call a one term. Again, coming from the word mono. And so it would be something like 4x, it might be 3, it might be 5x squared y. Any of those would be monomials. Then we have the binomial, just like what it sounds, we have, and that is two terms. Okay, so that might be like 4x plus 1. That could be 3 plus y. It might be 5x squared y plus 2xy. Any of those would be terms. Trinomial on here would be three terms. So again, the one that I gave you up here earlier, that is a trinomial. So a very common trinomial that we see looks like this. But in fact, the trinomial does not have to have, the same variables even. Because I could have something like that. Or I could have an x squared y plus an xy plus an x, something like that. So all of those would be trinomials because they have three terms. Now, the other way that we name polynomial functions, other than the number of terms, is by the degree. So let's talk about how we find the degree. So if it is one variable, if your equation has one variable in it, then your degree is your highest exponent. So an example, would be like the problems that I gave you there earlier. If I had 4x, then that exponent is understood to be a 1, so this would be of degree 1, okay? If I had another one, so they has one variable, and if you notice the first one is 2 and the second one is 1, so this one would have a degree 2. And then I could continue on. I could have something like 3x4 plus 2x cubed plus x squared plus x minus 1. And again, when I look at all those exponents, I got a 4, a 3, 2, and a 1. That's what I'm comparing is those exponents here. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, and we'll talk about the next one there. The highest there is the 4, so this is a degree 4. Okay? Now then, what happens if you have more than one variable? So I gave you some examples up above with more than one variables. I gave you 5x squared y. I gave you a 2xy. I gave you an x squared y. And all of those have more than one variable. And so if that is the case, it is the sum of the exponents. Okay? So in this first one, again, that's an understood 1. So this would be degree 3, because I'm going to add up the 2 and the 1. I get a 3. This one, again, understood 1's here. So I'm going to add 1 and 1, and I'm going to get degree 2, okay? And then my last one would be a degree 3. Now, what happens if I have something like there in the second one, where I had a 5x squared y plus 2xy, or maybe the one below that where I had this one, okay? And I want to know the degree. Okay? Well, when I look at this, this one is 2 and 1, which is 3. This one would be 1 and 1, which is 2. And so you always go with the highest. So if we're talking the degree of a polynomial, it is then the highest of those. So that would be degree 3. This one, again, I'm going to look at, this is 2 and 1, that's 3. That's 1 and 1, that is 2. And then this would just have a understood 1 there. So this is also a degree 3, okay? And I can go back in and put those numbers if that helps you out. Okay? So, again, they are two different ways in which we find the degree. So be sure you know the difference there. Okay, why do we need to know the degree? Well, one of the things that's going to help us know what kind of a graph we have, whether it's linear or quadratic or cubic. And when I make those kind of comments or I use those words, that's telling you what degree you have, okay? The other thing that we use the degree for is how we write our answers all the time. And we write them in what's called descending order. Okay, and so what descending order means is simply you write your terms from highest to lowest. Degree. Okay, so here is an example. If I have 4x plus 5x squared minus 3 plus, let's say, 6x cubed. So you would need to write that in descending order. So I would start with the highest one. Okay, again, if you need to put that there, that's 1. So I have the cube as first, then the square, and be sure you do take the sign on your coefficient with it. In other words, if that had been a negative 5x squared, it would have been a negative over here. 4x, and then your minus 3 goes next, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So again, your descending order is always from your highest to your lowest, and it is the expectation that anytime you write a polynomial, it is in that order, okay? Now, sometimes you might have one of those degrees that's missing, where this one actually goes 3, 2, 1. Sometimes one of those might be missing, and that's okay. Okay, the next word is the coefficient, okay? And again, the coefficient is the number in front of your variable okay, that tells you how many. Okay, so it's going to answer the question, how many do I have? And so when I look at this up above, in this case, if I look at the 6x cubed, and I say, how many x cubes do I have? Your answer would be, I have 6 of those. Okay? And on the 5x squared, my coefficient then would be the 5. And on my 4x, my coefficient would be 4. And on my constant, my coefficient is actually 3. Okay? Now, when I look at those coefficients, we also talk about what's called the leading coefficient. And that is simply the coefficient on your highest degree. Okay, so in this case, my leading coefficient would be 6 because it's on the x cubed. Okay, now I told you earlier we were going to talk about that -3 and why in this case I said it was a coefficient. Because guys, your constant term, if you look at this, is actually, so that 3 is actually 3 times x to the 0. Okay, and I could come up here and I could put that x to the 0, and then you see how it's in descending order. Now, why do we write it just as a -3 though? So that goes back to, remember our rule that anything to the 0 power is 1. So this is really 3 times 1, -3 times 1, which is a -3. So basically this is just a simpler way of writing this, okay? So a -3x to the 0 and a -3 are the same thing. So when we talk about putting it in descending order, why that -3 goes at the end is because it has x to the 0, which should always be your smallest degree. Okay? Just about done. So now let's talk about naming them. So a degree of 0, well, that is exactly what I just showed you there. So that would be my 3x to the 0. That is your constant term, okay? And a lot of times, again, you'll see it just referred to as 3, and we say it's a constant because, again, that variable is to the 0, or think of it as there's no variable, so I'm not multiplying it by anything, so that is always going to be 3. We have our linear function, guys, which goes back to, if you think about a line, our mx plus b. And so our linear function is actually something in the form of 2x plus 3, and it has a degree of 1. That's how you recognize your equations. One of the things that I'll have you do is I may give you a list of equations and I say, okay, which one is a horizontal line? Which one is a vertical line? Which one is a line period? Or I might say which one is a parabola or a quadratic? Which one is a cubic? And so forth. And you should be able to recognize those. So a linear function has an x to the 1 power. Quadratics then have a x to squared, okay, power, and your cubic function again has a cube to it. okay? And I could come over here and do this, and you might also write this down. So this is ax to the 0, ax plus b, these are the basic forms, ax squared plus bx plus c, and then this would be ax cubed plus bx plus c, x squared plus cx plus d. And so those would be, without numbers in those would be your basic forms. Okay? And they do always just kind of go down with your letters A, B, C. Okay? So if I had a fourth degree, it would be ax4, bx squared, bx cubed, cx squared, plus dx plus e. Okay? So I'll stop this. This is the notes piece of it, and then we will go into, actually, I'm going to just go ahead because I'm not sure where we're at on time, but this is going to work. Let's just go ahead. So I'm going to do these real quick. And these are the examples of what you're going to be doing for the homework, which is not very long at all. So we're going to do descending order. So again, I just look over and get my highest power. And put it in descending. Okay? Again, your degree is your highest power, which is 2. My leading coefficient is the coefficient of my highest degree. So my highest degree was 2. The leading coefficient is the coefficient of that term. And now I have to name it. Okay? So it is a square. So that means that it is a quadratic. And so we call this a quadratic. Probably should have made bigger space here. And it has 3 terms, so it is a quadratic trinomial. Okay? So next one, descending order, my highest power is the 4. And then the 3. And then the 2. And this is what I said, take that sign with it. The 9 is negative. And then the 4x. Okay? So my highest degree is 4. My leading coefficient is, whoops, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. My leading coefficient is the 5, negative 5. And the name of it, again, it's an x4. And so that I did not give you. That is called a quartic. Quartic. And since it has 4 terms, it is a quartic polynomial. Okay? Final one here, put it in order, so it's 8x plus 10. That means it has a degree of 1. My leading coefficient, it is 8. And it is to a first power, so it is linear. And it is 2 terms, so it is a binomial. Okay? And so you can either make this chart or somehow just write the answers out to the side, but do write down your polynomial, descending order, degree, leading coefficient, and the name of it, and that is your homework just for this lesson.